The demon who wore a human face. The moment I discovered the strange charm under my pillow, I felt the air grow heavy around me. It was small, woven together with human hair, tiny bones, and tattered fabric. It smelled of earth and decay, and even after I put it down, the scent lingered on my fingers. I didn't understand why anyone would place such a thing in my bed, or what it meant. But I knew one thing. It wasn't good. I ran straight to my grandmother, the only person I trusted, with such mysteries. When I showed her the charm, her expression darkened, and she whispered something under her breath. "This is not something to take lightly," she said. "There are forces in this world we cannot always see, and not everyone who smiles at you wishes you well." She took the charm outside and buried it behind her hut. Sprinkling some ash and muttering prayers as she did, I stood silently, watching her, my heart pounding with fear and confusion. At the time, I didn't know how connected this small, strange object was to Akuchi, the man the villagers called Ekwensu Uwa, the demon in human form. But soon, his story would consume our entire village. Akuchi arrived in our village during the Harmattan season, when the air was dry and the dust swirled like restless spirits. He came alone, carrying nothing but a small bag over his shoulder. He quietly took up residence in an abandoned hut at the edge of the forest, far from the rest of the village. He was a tall, lean man with skin that seemed to glow faintly under the sun. His sharp features gave him an almost otherworldly appearance, but it was his eyes that unsettled people the most. They were piercing, like they could see right through you. At first, no one paid him much attention. He kept to himself, building a small garden near his hut and weaving baskets, which he sold at the market. But his presence stirred unease. "Who is he?" people whispered. "Where did he come from?" Soon rumors began to spread. Some claimed he spoke to animals. Others swore they had seen him walking barefoot on thorns without bleeding. A few even said they had heard strange voices coming from his hut at night. The more the villagers talked, the more they convinced themselves that Akuchi was not an ordinary man. It wasn't long before strange things started happening. Crops that had been healthy began to wither overnight. Goats and chickens fell ill without warning. Children complained of strange dreams, where they saw a dark figure standing at the edge of the forest, watching them. One day, I overheard two women in the market whispering about Akuchi. "They say he's cursed," one said, "that he carries a darkness with him." "Did you hear about Chika?" the other replied. "Her daughter fell ill after Akuchi passed by their house." The stories grew with every passing day, feeding the villagers' fear. But I wasn't convinced. I was curious, and my curiosity often got me into trouble. One afternoon, I decided to follow Akuchi. He had just left the market, carrying a bundle of woven mats over his shoulder. I trailed him from a distance, hiding behind trees and bushes whenever he glanced back. He stopped at the stream near the forest and knelt down to wash his hands. I froze, unsure of what to do. Then, as if sensing my presence, he turned and looked directly at me. "Why are you following me, child?" he asked. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. I wanted to see if the stories were true. I blurted out, "If you really speak to animals or walk on thorns?" To my surprise, he smiled. A small, sad smile. "People believe what they want to believe," he said. "The truth is often too simple for them to accept." Not long after, tragedy struck. Adaubi, the chief's youngest daughter, fell ill with a fever that no one could explain. The village healer tried everything: herbs, prayers, even animal sacrifices. But nothing worked. The whispers grew louder. "It's Akuchi," people said. He cursed her. The chief, desperate to save his daughter, called for a meeting in the village square. Akuchi was summoned, and when he arrived, the crowd fell silent. He stood calmly as the villagers shouted accusations, their fear and anger boiling over. "I have done nothing to harm anyone," Akuchi said, "but if my leaving will bring you peace, I will go." The villagers jeered and threw stones, but he didn't flinch. As he turned to leave, Adaobi's mother screamed, "May you suffer for what you've done." Akuchi paused and turned back, his piercing gaze settling on her. "Suffering already lives in this village," he said quietly, "but it is not mine to bear." The next morning, Adaobi's fever broke. The villagers celebrated, convinced that Akuchi's departure had lifted the curse. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. His parting words echoed in my mind, like a riddle begging to be solved. Went to my grandmother and told her everything. She listened carefully, her expression growing darker with each word. "There are things in this village that you are too young to understand," she said. After much persuasion, she told me the truth. Years ago, Adaobi's mother had visited a diviner in secret, desperate for a child. The diviner had warned her that the ritual would come with a price, a life for a life, but she went through with it anyway. When Adaobi's older sibling died in infancy, the family buried the truth, fearing shame and judgment. But the curse of the ritual lingered, waiting for its time. Akuchi, it seemed, had known the truth all along. Months passed, and life in the village returned to normal. But the weight of what had happened stayed with me. I often thought about Akuchi and wondered where he had gone. Years later, I heard that he had settled in another village, living quietly and helping those in need. The rumors followed him, of course, but to me he was no demon. He was simply a man who saw the truth others refused to face. If you ever hear a story about a demon wearing a human face, remember this: not all demons are evil, and not all humans are kind. Sometimes the real monsters are the lies we tell ourselves and the secrets we bury in the dark.